Hi, I'm Dr. Russ, and this is Unit 5, Write an Annotated Bibliography. In Unit 4, you went out and found 8 credible sources to use in your paper, and you wrote a bibliography. In this unit, we're going to expand on that bibliography by turning it into an annotated bibliography, which is a special kind of note-taking you can use to help write paper when you're doing academic writing. Let's see how that's done. In this video, we will learn what an annotated bibliography is. Then we will learn how to write annotations for the sources that we have found. Then we'll go through an example where you can learn how to mark up a source and write an annotation from the things you marked up. And then finally, we'll talk about the assignment. So the goal for this unit is, on your own, you will be able to analyze and summarize sources to produce an annotated bibliography. So what is an annotated bibliography? An annotated bibliography is a special way of taking notes. It helps you recall quickly how and why you wanted to use the sources you found. It contains one entry for each source, and the entry consists of 2 parts: a reference written in APA format and an annotation, which is a description of the source. Let's look at an example. So here's an entry out of an annotated bibliography. At the top is a reference written in APA format, and that should be familiar to you because you wrote references when you did your bibliography in the previous unit. Below that is a short paragraph, which is the annotation, a summary of what that source was about. So, why should I write annotations? Well, annotations basically help you remember why you chose the source to use it in your paper. And it will also guide you in deciding how you're going to use the material from the source in your paper. So why is this important? Perhaps in a short paper like this, it may not be necessary to write an annotated bibliography, but later, when you're working on your thesis or your final project, you may have many sources, maybe 30, and it's going to be hard to remember why you chose those sources or what you wanted to do with them, especially if you gather those sources over several weeks or months. So an annotated bibliography helps you remember what you're doing and why. There's other reasons for writing annotations too. To help your reader understand something, to show your reader that you understand something, to evaluate something written by someone else, to give your reader evidence that something is true, and to persuade your reader to do something. So how do I write an annotation? An annotation is a summary of your source. And by summary, we mean it is a short overview of the main points of a source. It's written entirely in your own words, and it's much shorter than the original text. As you can see, we have one paragraph that describes an entire book. So there are some do's and some do nots of writing an annotation. You do want to give a concise, that is, brief overview of a text's main points in your own words. Just simply provide a clear, objective, and accurate account of the most important information and ideas in that source. But don't go overboard. Do not critique or analyze the source. Do not copy any text from the original, and do not miss any of the key points. Again, there's a right way and a wrong way to do annotations. We've been talking about writing them in your own words, and here's why. Annotations should reflect your purpose. They're for you to use to support what you want to say in your paper. That's why they're written in your words. They contain information needed for your paper. One thing you definitely don't want to do is use summaries that are in publications, such as what's written on the flap of a book jacket or maybe in the first pages of a book, because those summaries reflect the author's purpose or the publisher's purpose, generally, which is to sell the book or magazine or article or whatever. So do not copy a summary written by somebody else and use it as your annotation. Somebody else's summary is for them to use to support what they want to say. You want the annotation to support what you want to say. So here's a 5-step process to use when writing an annotation. First, read the text. Then, break the text down into sections. Identify the key points in each section. Then write the annotation. And finally, check the annotation against the source. So let's do an example. Here we see an article from an academic journal that documents a research study. As we read the article, we start out looking at the first paragraph, which is the introduction, and we look at it carefully. And we highlight things like the article topic and the thesis statement, if we can find it. Then as we go down through the article, we read at least the first sentence of every paragraph. And we simply underline important points out of the article. So let's go through this article. So we talked about breaking the article down into sections, and the author has created those sections for us using headings, which are circled in this example. And again, we continue to underline the main points that we want to remember, and we make notes in the margin. As we go on, we continue to underline main points and circle headings and make notes in the margin. So once we have marked up the article, we go through and we look at all the things we circled and underlined and all the notes we wrote in the margin, and then we write an annotation. Because the article was quite long, the annotation is a little longer than usual too. As we scroll down the page, you can see that this annotation actually has 3 paragraphs to it. When you read a shorter article, the annotation may be just 1 paragraph. I want to call your attention to one thing about the formatting. The first paragraph, or if there's only 1 paragraph, the only paragraph, is completely indented underneath the reference, as shown here. If you need additional paragraphs, they are also indented under the reference, and they start with a first line indentation as well. So notice how the first paragraph aligns with the reference, but the first line is all the way out to the left, while in the following paragraphs, it's indented. Both the marked up article and the example annotation are in Moodle. So download them and look at them closely. See what points the person thought were important and underlined, and then how they used the underlined points to write the annotation. Now let's look at the Unit 5 assignment. In this assignment, you're going to demonstrate that you can create an annotated bibliography. So let's look at that in detail. First, make a copy of your Unit 4 assignment and use that copy to do the Unit 5 assignment. Put a blank line between each reference so that you'll have a place to write a summary of the source. That is, the annotations will go in where those blank lines are. If you haven't yet, download your 8 sources, print them out if you like, and mark them up. Go back and look at the example that we have that shows a marked up source. Then, for each of the 8 sources, write a 200-word summary of the source. Remember, do not copy the source's abstract or executive summary because they serve the purposes of the author or publisher. Write the summary in your own words because the summary that you write will contain information that will help you decide how to include the information from the source into your paper. And again, go look at the example annotation. Then, in your Unit 5 paper, put a copy of each annotation below the source's reference and above the blank line. Here's an example. You won't put your annotation in blue. We just marked it in blue to make it stand out in this example. When you've done this, submit your annotated bibliography to your instructor. Here's how we'll evaluate this assignment. First, the topic is stated and is consistent with the approved topic. There should be 8 references cited. Each reference should have an annotation, and the annotation should be 151 to 200 words long. Most annotations should be a short overview of the main points of a source, written entirely in the student's own words. Most annotations should support the paper topic. And the references are as close to APA 7th edition format as you can get. And be sure to submit the assignment on time so that you don't lose points. If you have any questions, ask your lab assistant or the instructor.